Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to GVO Tech Talk. So today, my presentation topic is about Azure AD applications. So Azure Active Directory application. So in this presentation, so this is the outline of my presentation. So in this presentation, I am planning to give you a brief idea about uh, Azure AD and AD applications and create a first single tenant application and convert it to multi-tenant application. So my main focus will be how a single tenant application converted to multi-tenant. So with that, I'll move forward. So I think most of us familiar about Azure Active Directory. So it's a cloud-based identity and access management service. So there can be there are a lot of services provided by it, but I mean organizations usually set up their users in AD, Azure AD, and assign and users are assigned to different permission using this. And the main thing I am planning to talk about in AD, so it allows developers to build application that signs into my Microsoft identities, and then we can get tokens and we can call to Graph APIs and other Microsoft APIs. So we can do those kind of things from Azure AD. Uh, so so in order to like I'm mainly talking about communicating application writing an application to communicate with Azure AD. So for that, we have to register Azure AD application in uh, in Azure Active Directory. So so this Azure AD application that is registered on uh, Azure AD. So it basically define uh, what the purpose of the application that we are planning to build. So it might contain of how the authentication is going to happen from this app, and also the permission that it allows user to communicate with the services. So here are some of the things that might include in ADF. So I'm focusing about that authentication and authorization part, and the permissions that Azure AD app has. So first, I'll give a brief uh, introduction. So we most of us know about these things. So authentication is basically a process of proving uh, who are you who are going to access uh, this particular application, and the authorization is granting an authenticated party a permission to do something. So there are authentication and authorization protocols. There are a lot of protocols. So I think most of them has been implemented in this Azure AD, Microsoft Identity Platform. So I'll compare a few of them. Uh, we already heard some of these terms. So most of us uh, heard about oath. So oath is it's basically for authorization purpose, and OpenID Connect. So it's a protocol for the authentication. So so we use these two together uh, to build uh, build application, and likewise, so OAuth and SAML. So we can SAML is a authentication protocol. OAuth we already talked about. It's a authent- authorization protocol. So we can use uh, so these protocols. There are tutorials available to build application, and so OpenID and SAML, they are both authentication uh, authorization uh, protocols actually. So I mean, both can be used to enable single sign-on and that kind of feature. So now SAML is uh, now the most of the application use OpenID. So I'll in the demo I'll show some diagram about it. Um, and so this authentication and authorization, so it happens via some security tokens using security tokens. So in OAuth and OpenID, so protocols they are using JSON-based JW tokens. So there can be you might uh, you might have to access token, refresh token, that kind of token types when you communicate when you do work with these two protocols. And there's a this is one important thing these token. So these JW tokens are signed by a security token server. So using its private key, and they are publishing, and that security token server publishes its public key. So when we receive an access token, I mean we can verify its signature using that private key if you want to check whether it's been modified or not. So and so so when we talk about OAuth, uh, you might heard different authorization uh, flows. So these are some flows, authorization flows that is available, and these are the some of the token that different types of flows uh, dealing with. So I remember, I think Taranju J has done a similar presentation about these kind of authentication flows. So in my demo, I am planning to use two implicit flow and apps developed by implicit flow and client credentials. And the token used in SAML, so they are XML. They are in XML format. So I'll show a sample one in the demo. So yes, so this is the one part that is there in Azure AD app, which is authentication, and the other part is giving permissions to the services that it exposes. So in when talking about permissions, so there are two types of permissions that we came in Azure AD apps. So one is delegated permission, and the other type is called application permission. So delegated permissions. So basically, so it will not give more permission than the user already has in the AD. Like for example, he will be able to read his profile using um, delegated permissions. But if an application wants, for example, to read all the users in AD, so then they have to perm, uh, provide application permission. Has to set up the application permission. So most of the application, almost all of the application permission uh, requires admin consent from the AD. So now there's another term, consent. So when we communicate with the app, so there are different kind of consent that we may came across. So one is user consent. So let's say we are creating an app and which read only a user's profile, on a particular logged in user profile. So in that case, uh, the first time that user access to that application, so it's asking the user's consent. So and the other type is admin consent. So as I mentioned earlier, so if we want to read all the users data, so then uh, for that kind of permission, so admin has to give admin of that global admin of that AD has to grant the consent for the for all the users. And the other thing is also the same, like uh, we might see consent pop up, like admin can grant the admin can grant consent on behalf of the organization in those kind of scenarios. So users won't get that permission consent screen. Okay, so I'll move to the demo. Uh, I'll show some of the things that I have talked in the past slide as well. So for the demonstration, so I'll be using a code sample available in GitHub. So which is a Angular single page application. So which communicate with Azure AD app and allow user to single sign on to the app to the Angular application. So I think uh, you guys are familiar with the single sign-on concept. So it's like I think recently Chalit also has written a blog post. So there users can sign once to the account and they can access its application services and other resources until he is logging out without relogging. So and so this application sample application, it uses implicit flow for authentication. Okay. So I'll go to the demo. Okay. So before going into the demo, so I want to show you some documentation. So it talks about the authentication flows and application scenarios. So from here, we can identify what is the we can get an idea about what is the authentication flow that we want use in our application. Uh, so like it talk about single page application, most of it use implicit flow. And if you are if you have a web application which is communicate to API, so it use a different one. Likewise, we can get an idea about what kind of authentication flow has to be used from this kind of documentation. So I'll for the first one I'll use this implicit flow to single page application to communicate to the API. Okay, and I'll just show you. Maybe I'll show you later. Okay, so I have this is sample application available in the available in the available in the this documentation. So which basically allow a user to this Angular application which use plugin to communicate to the Azure AD and allow single sign-on to the users. So it's already running. So I'll go to that. So this is the application, and it only has two components, home and profile. And so inside the app module, so we can configure the so it used this application use this MSAL module to MSAL plugin to communicate with the AD. So when we enabling the SSO for our application, so mainly we want this information. So which one is client ID, and then we want from which authority that we are getting this getting the token access tokens and the redirect URL. So before that, I have to create an Azure AD application. So okay, so I have already created an. This is in Azure. So we can find Azure Active Directory in here, and there we can once we go to the Azure Active Directory, we can register applications. So in order to provide a single sign-on, we have to create a Azure AD app. So we can register new app. So it only asks the name and the account type that we want to support. So for the demo, first I'll create a single tenant application, and I have already created it. And then there we have to configure the authentication process and the API permission. So inside inside the authentication, so uh, we can configure the platform. So this redirect URL is required for the single page application. So this is the redirect URL, and so since I am planning to use the implicit grant, so I have to enable these two tokens. So after that, we need this applications ID, which is we can find here. And the other thing that code sample that I have downloaded. So other thing we need is the authority. So this part is always be same. So after that, we have to give the tenant that this AD tenant ID that registered application resides in. So in this case, I have registered this application. So this is my tenant ID. So we can get those information. So So the main purpose of this presentation is like not building an SSO app. So trying to convert a single tenant into a multi-tenant one. So I'll first, so I'll already added the application ID and the I have replaced here the tenant ID. Now I will run the, we'll try to log in. Okay, so in the tenant that I have created the application, there's a user called Akil at bonafide software.com. So okay, so this has been changed to logout. So if I move to the so the reason that I haven't get the consent because I have already logged into this one earlier. So if I move to the profile, so it takes takes the logged in user's name and display here. So and I'll just close tab and log into the site. So since I has been all, I have been using single sign on Azure AD, so it will next time when I log in, so I have logged into the same user. So I'll just show you the tokens that this application creates. So it's in the application. It's in the local storage. I'll clear all first. Okay. So give Okay, I have copied the token and I'm just trying to give you what would it be look like this JW token. Okay, so uh, so this is if we go to this JWT so we can JW token is consist of header payload and the signature. So I mean, we can read what inside in an JWT token. So only thing it's do is the verify the signature and make sure the token has not been modified. So we can verify a token if we are able to find out the public key that has been generated this uh, token. So this is what a DWT token looks like. And now I, I mean, I was able to log into a particular tenant. It's been that the AD application that has been registered in the same tenant. So let's see what happen if like we want to reuse this same application to logged into the I mean assume that we have a multi-tenant application. So we have configured it to a particular tenant, but another tenant in our application requires the same functionality that its users wants to log in, sign into the application uh, application. So one thing we can do is like we can register Azure AD app for the second tenant as well. But when it comes to scalability, so it's not a good practice to uh, create apps for each and every tenant that requires the uh, single sign-on. So for a moment, I'll log out from this application and and I'll log into a different user in a different tenant and see what will happen. So this application has been registered in a tenant called Bonafide Software, but I am now logging into a user in a different tenant. So definitely it won't allow, saying that the the application, this is the application, it's not been uh, registered in the tenant that user has that currently logged in user in. So what we can do is we can make our Azure AD application that we are registered in the first tenant. We can make it multi-tenant, and we can modify the our SPA code, our Angular code, and using one Azure AD app registered in one client, we can give access to multiple AD logins, uh, uh, multi-tenant SSO login. So there are two steps need to be done for that. First, we have to go to the place that where we have registered the application. So this is Bonafide Software. So this is the application. So in the authenticated section, if you can remember, there's a place that we can set. We can make the application as multi-tenant. So we can allow it will allow the multi-tenant feature. So that's the one step, and then we have to modify our uh, code. So I'll go to the code. So I mean in most of the I mean, for the single sign-on, it only requires this application ID and the authority. We have to change the authority. Previously, it was the authority for that authority that who delivers the token was the application registered Azure tenant. So if we use this one, it will not work. So we have to change this part. So there are a few configurations that we can do. I'll so some of them. So there are actually it mentions 3 ways. Like if you want allow it to only to a particular tenant, like I have added, we can set the tenant ID, tenant information as the tenant ID or its tenant name. Or if we only want to allow it to different only to tenants, Azure AD tenants, so we can use it as a use the configuration as organizations. Or otherwise, we want to allow it to organizations and also the personal Microsoft account. So we can use the uh, common one. And if we only want our AD app to be allowed to Microsoft accounts, personal Microsoft account, so we have to provide the authority as consumer. So this URL slash the other part. So here I'll use common. So I'll giving allowing this allowing authority for everyone. So I mean these are the basic two configurations. Actually, we want to convert an single tenant Azure AD app to a multi-tenant Azure AD app, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I'll log in to the other user. The user that is who is not in this registered application registered Azure AD. So previously I was not able to log in. Okay, so here it also the same. So it's not asking the user's consent. I have tried it out earlier. So the user was able to log in this time, but his name is different. So like we haven't created multiple Azure AD applications. So we only used one. Now from our single page application, we are able to log into multiple multiple users in different AD accounts. So I'll show one more thing. So these two members are, I mean, in Azure AD, there are, if you go to the Azure AD, there are two user types. Like one is a member user type, which is created on the particular AD, and others are guest users. Like, let's see if he has the okay. So I mean, so if I logged in as Akile at GVO for this, I mean, for this, even if it's a single tenant application, I will be able to log in, even though this application not registered in GVO. So now it's anyway allow me to log in because I make the application as multi-tenant. So I'll so this is the consent. So since this is the first time that I am login to this application as Akile at GVO, so this is the consent that I mentioned this application as. So, so I can consent to receive the basic information. Okay. So likewise, so you can convert. I mean, from configuration wise, it's very easy to convert a single tenant application. But we have done it in GVO projects in Red Engine and Bonafide. So, and while doing that, we have come. I mean, I'll explain some of the uh, issues that we have faced during this conversion. So, I'll continue the presentation.
Akila,
Yeah.
excuse me, Akila. Can we restrict the login only for few different tenants? So rather than giving access to all the personal accounts and other tenants also?
So I'll come to that. So Tarindu, so in Bonafide also, so even we allow, I mean, the single sign-on application, it's a multi-tenant one. For the application, we can, I mean, any user can log into it. I mean, the other, let's say if there's a GVO tenant and and the tenant called A and B, GVO and A wants to use this single sign-on, but tenant B doesn't own. So in that case, if some user belongs only to tenant B, if he is logged in from this application, he can be logged. But after that, I mean, from our application, we have to restrict that. So otherwise, I mean, uh, that's
So,
actually what.
Akila, so is it like our application, we enable the common endpoint?
Yes.
So all the tenants can be used to log into our application, but when we get the token, is it like we differentiate who issued the token
Yeah.
and
So I'll maybe show you a few tokens. Then it will be
okay.
clear. Uh,
So there's no Microsoft way, like it's not
yes,
like
that's
comma separate the tenant
yeah.
IDs. You don't have that, right?
All right. So that's actually I want to talk. Like we have
Oh.
faced similar issue in Bonafide when we do. Um, so I'll first show you few tokens. Then we can get the idea. So I'll first logged into. I'll first change the application type so we can get the clear idea. So even now we are only allowing a particular tenant users to be logged into this application. So I'll change it. So now only bona fide software users should be able to log in. Okay. Now I will show you the users that are there in the bona fide software. So I'll use two different users and show you the token. So one is I'll log in as Akila at GVO. So he is a guest user, and also I'll use this bona fide, and we'll check the payload how it's look like. I'll log out from here first, and so I'll have to do changes to the application as well. So the application is same. I mean, if we create any type of application, this is a SPA Angular application. Like if we implement the SSO using another one, we have to provide these two properties. So when converting, we have to mostly worry about this authority part. So since I have restricted only to bonafide software.com, I'll add bonafide tenant here, ID here. Okay, I'll okay, now I have logged out. I'll log in. Anyway, I have previously logged in as. I'll anyway log in. So this is a member type user that is who is in this AD. Okay, he's been logged in, and I have to get the access token. Okay. I have copied it. Okay, so in the payload, actually, so these are the information available. So it's talking about the so it basically contains the information about the logged in user, not about the tenant specifically. So if it was a common one, so here it will be a issue is the common. Like if I logged in from GVO1, so here like for the moment we'll remember the issue is this one. let's make sure. Starting from, yeah, okay. I'll log out.
Akila, can you go back to that JWT viewer just for a moment? Just scroll down. So there's this tenant claim. There's a tenant. No, tenant region scope. There. So what about this TID? I think it's, is it tenant ID? Is it equal to that tenant ID you highlighted?
Wait, this one. Yes, this is
Yes.
tenant ID.
Okay. So we could use even this one to validate whether these are allowed tenant for our system.
We'll remember this one, and I'll now log in as Akila at GVO. So actually, even though I am Akila, at GVO is a guest user in. He's a guest user in that AD, and
Okay.
and for this one, if we getting the same one, I think we can clearly say like we can use this one. But if we get the GVO tenant ID here, like then there's I mean the main problem that we had was to derive that user context. So for the same user, if he's in a multiple tenant, so we should have a way to identify from which tenant we have to log in this user.
Yeah, at this moment.
At this moment, yes.
So in the issuer field, what's that in the ISS field? Issuer field, is that different? So for the moment, the issuer tenant ID is equal to the TID value,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Okay. Let's see.
because all are in the same tenant. So since I am a this is another consent pop-up that I was talking. So since I am a admin, global admin, I can consent instead on behalf of my organization. So I will not do that. Okay, I have logged in as so this is the other tenant. This is the Akila. So here it's the same because we have I think the reason is here I have make the application as single tenant, and this one is also the same. Yeah, so for the single tenant it's clear, but
Akila, if you are going to show the next example, the other example that you talked about, before that, can you also copy the sub claim value as well? The 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 sub claim value, the one above the TID,
TID
the
this one,
one
right?
above that, yeah, the sub claim. Just copy it. If you are showing the other scenario, let's just compare. But if not, it's fine. We'll move on.
Yeah, okay. So if the application type is same, I mean single tenant, so it was same. I'll check the other one. I'll quickly do it.
Hi, Akila and Ravin. So I have a small question there. So Akila showed that the Akila at gvo.com is a guest user at the Bonafide software. So does it that mean that Akila gvo.com belongs to the Bonafide, or it's what?
No, it's a Microsoft concept. So you can be part of multiple tenants. It's not. It's like you actually belong to GVO, but you can also be a guest member of another organization. You can be guest member of multiple organizations as well. We have similar setup, I think, in Brickenden. Asanka, I think Asanka, our team members use the same asanka at gvo.com to log into the Brickenden tenant also in Azure portal. So there, Asanka becomes a guest member. So I think what Kelly is trying to see is whether our application sees those two users as the same user or two different users.
Yes. So yeah, I'll try one more time, and then I'll move forward. Okay, I'm going to log in.
For Tarindu's benefit, Tarindu, so I think even Matt's account in Teams, he's coming from some Microsoft tenant organization, his account, but he's a guest in our Teams directory.
Yeah.
That's why he can't perform some operations in Teams.
Okay. Yes. So what Akila is trying to find out that whether it's identified that difference. Is it?
Yes. And these things are very cumbersome to understand. I mean, I think me and Tarindu understand these things because we very recently did similar work in our project as well. Otherwise, it's very difficult to understand and confusing.
So I have I have made the application as multi-tenant, and I have logged in as Akila. So okay, so the problem is this, like if you can remember, now since I have made this application as multi-tenant. Now the issuer is actually GVO. So even though I want, let's say, this AzureAd GVO is in Bonafide and GVO, but I want to log into Bonafide using AzureAd GVO, but as the issuer, I mean, in issuer, it's now showing the issuer as GVO. And the reason is, so GVO, it's started from 2, and here, where's the TID? So it's showing the GVO one. And you mentioned about this one, right? It's
That is also changed, right?
It's
Yeah.
also different. So this is actually one issue that we have faced. Like we want to find out we want to correctly log in the actual tenant specific user for that moment. So I'll move to the presentation. I'll quickly continue. So when it comes to multi-tenant, so I have, so this is the workflow in that application. So we have discussed about it. So so when we convert an application into multi-tenant, so we came across two types of object. So one is called application object, and other one is called service principal object. So actually, so we when we refer the documentation, we came across these two terminologies. So the application object, it is actually the original application that we have registered. So it's talking about the original one. The other one is actually the service principal is a local representation of that application in that specific tenant. So what happens when we make an application, single tenant application multi-tenant? So when user these are the steps. So we send the request to command, and when users are signed in to the app, so the one app is in actually the app is created in development tenant. So if we logged into a user in another tenant, so it will create a copy of that application. So it's mentioned as service principal in the other tenant. So and after that, so it uses this service principal to communicate with the app. So that's what happening behind the scene. So we are not creating this app in each and every tenant. This multi-tenant pattern will take to the similar thing. So I'll tell about some of the actually the issues that we have faced. So as I have mentioned earlier, there were two authentication processes, OpenID and SAML. So we had a problem from what we have to actually use. So actually there's a good document in actually their documentation. So it has a flow diagram how to determine uh, the authentication flow. So mostly, if it's a new application, we can move with the recent technology. So unfortunately for Bonafide, so we have to move with the SAML implementation. So it's a different way of doing the same thing. And then the second one is actually that we have looked into this issue. So mapping the AD user to the relevant, uh, the actual user that we want to log in. So basically, to mapping out the AD user to the application user correct application user if there's a same AD user in multiple tenant. So we have actually has done it we handle it in our application basically. So one thing we can do is so after logged in, I mean we haven't done this. After logging in, we can get the tenants that he is in as user to logged into choose one tenant, and we from our application we can handle it. The other way we have done is in Bonafide actually. So we let user to select the tenant first. So then we know what is the application tenant that he want to log in. So yeah, so that's another thing. That's how we handle it, and then especially in Bonafide there was another issue. Actually, if you guys are planning to do this kind of thing, maybe you might have to think about it. Maybe in the new application it won't be a problem. Like if I mean in Bonafide each and every tenant has a different URL. But here this is the redirect URL that will once user successfully sign in, uh, it will redirect to this URL for the further with the tokens and everything. So in Bonafide, so the SAML token will be sent to the URLs in here. So we have added different because each and every tenant has a different URL. If a tenant enables Azure AD SSO, we have added it here. But the issue was for the logout URL, there was only one. So that was another thing that we have faced. Like uh, the issue was actual issue was, so when user sign out from the Azure AD, but he is not logged out from Bonafide. So those are the some of the issues that we have faced, and I'll move to the presentation. And actually, I wanted to show you the other type of another sample application, which use a different. It's different to other. So it consists of permissions that need admin consent. So I'll quickly show it also. So this is the this is the first application. If we move to the API permission section, so it only has the first one only has user read one. But if we move to the second application, and so it has that this application needs to read all the user details in a particular tenant. So the application that I have created, so since this I am planning to use this AD app as a background job to sync or get users to my application. So because of that, I have used a client credential flow, which is kind of the recommended one in that, but the documentation that I have mentioned. So for that, I don't need to. Here at the moment it's single tenant. Anyway, since there's no time, I'll create it as a multi-tenant. Okay, and see from the application side, this is the only thing we have to do in order to make it a multi-tenant one. This application, and I have configured the application secret, and here for this one I have granted the admin consent for the bona fide software. Okay, so for the to acquire the tokens and get the users, we can perform those things via HTTP REST via REST API. So I am using Postman to show it. Okay, I have made the application as first I have to get the access token to get the users. So tenant one, I mean bonafidesoftware.com tenant ID, and you can find out the exact how this API call looks like from their wiki and the body parameters. So it needs the application ID. So and we need the secret key that I have generated. So I'll send it. So I was able to take the access token here. Then I am planning to using the graph API. I am getting the users. So for that, I only need to pass the access token that I have gained as a bearer token. So I was able to get the users. But let's say since I have made this Azure AD app multi-tenant, so I want to get the users from the second tenant, which is admin bonafidesoftware.com tenant. So I'll send a login request. So I'll change the tenant. And I'll all the other things are similar. Okay, so I get the access token. Now I am sending, I am calling the graph API to get the users of the second tenant. Hope it's correct. Okay, so I am getting that I'm getting an error like he was not able to get it. The reason is because for the second tenant, since this application requires admin consent, we haven't granted the admin consent for the second tenant. I hope that is the problem. So there is a way to grant that admin consent from there are multiple ways. So one is using a web request. I'll do it from here. Okay, for that I need the second tenant ID and the application ID. So just this one and we'll log out. Okay, we'll send this request to the second tenant, and someone of that tenant's global admin has to grant the admin consent for this application. So I am also a admin, global admin in the other tenant also. Okay, so now it's give me the consent. So basically, it shows the the application permission that it requires, and we have to grant the consent for the second tenant. That second tenant admin has to grant it. So then this is the additional step we have to follow if we are I mean there at the moment there's error. So I'm not sure exactly this reason, but this is the way that it has to be done. But at the moment it's showing an error. So sorry about it. So what should happen is after we give the after the second tenant give the consent. So if we perform the same, if we generate the access token again and do the call, so it will get the users from the second tenant. Yeah, so that's about those are the most of the things that I want to talk about in this presentation. Yeah, basically you can refer the Azure AD documentation, so it's really good. And this is the sample application that I have used. Okay, that's it. Do you guys have any other questions? Okay, so that's it. Thank you for your time.